Welcome to Kid Dies the Anime Season 2. That's right, this is the second part of Blooded Orphans, so if you guys haven't seen our first video, I recommend going and checking that one out. But if you're just here for the spice, for the drama, for the hot takes about Season 2, welcome to it. But I think this works out. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about Season 2. Some people think it's the best ending, some people think it's the worst ending, so we're gonna get into all of that. But before we do that, let's just do a quick catch-up on how we ended last episode. McGillis, this guy, now has an incredible amount of power, about 3 families worth within the 7 stars. Tekkadan, our heroes, are now a military advisor for the Arbrow economic bloc. Mikazuki is all gimped out and can't use one of his arms because of using his Gundam Barbatos at full power. Biscuit is still super dead, and I'm super sad about it. But that being said, Season 1 ended on a relatively high note. Tekkadan is in a good spot, most of our heroes are still alive, rip Biscuit. But yeah, they're finally getting some of that power and income that's stable that they wanted. It all sounds pretty fine and dandy. Seems like you could have ended it right there. But Season 2 is going to drop all of that off a cliff and make you feel like a dumbass for thinking a show this dark was going to end happily. And I don't think it's surprising that people generally prefer Season 1 over 2 on like a wider basis, especially in the West. In the West, we love happy endings, we love things being wrapped up, but that's not to say that Season 2 is bad. It's not, it's great. It's definitely darker and a lot more people die than in Season 1, but that's not necessarily what I think turns people away from Season 2. It's the feeling that you get when you finish it. And if you've seen like a lot of Yakuza movies, it's a very similar kind of experience. You don't really feel happy, you don't really feel fulfilled, you don't feel like any kind of justice was served, and you don't feel like the good guys, if there even are good guys, won. On the contrary, Blooded Orphans ends with you feeling upset. And some people don't like that because the series is 50 episodes long, and that's a huge time investment to end up being upset. But as we know, that was obviously completely intentional. If you've seen Season 2 of Blooded Orphans and hated the ending or felt like it was depressing, you're picking up on the primary point of the storyline and the answer to the uncertainty that Season 1 left you with. Season 2 breaks you down and chews you up by overwhelming you with the harsh realities that Tekkadan isn't as morally righteous as you'd think. So grab a teddy bear, get out the Kleenex. This is Gundam Blooded Orphans Season 2. Let's get into it. Do you like Gundam? Of course you do. Why else would you be watching this video? The cool ad reads? Well, lucky you, we have both, because this video is sponsored by FX Creations, the coolest Gundam merch makers on the market. They were nice enough to send me the RX-78-2 backpack, waist bag, wallet, and vacuum insulated bottle, which is awesome because that's my favorite Gundam. You gotta love the original. And guys, I gotta be totally honest with you, FX Creation does it right. Not only is the quality awesome, but they make official Gundam collaborations, meaning every single piece has a huge amount of attention and detail put into it. Now, I'm always skeptical when I get merch sent to me, but I legitimately love the RX-78-2 backpack. And believe it or not, I'm a big backpack guy. I have like 12 of them. But the color scheme and details perfectly match the Gundam's iconic appearance, with the red and yellow accents strategically placed to resemble like key elements of the Gundam. It's very cool. Plus there's a ton of cool little Easter eggs all over it, like the EFSF text on the side. It's the most Gundam a backpack could possibly be without being like egregious. It fits that nice fashionable space. It also has this incredible AGS suspension system that absorbs downward impact and protects your muscles and spine, plus an ergonomical design back pad for comfort. And honestly, it literally feels like this thing is floating when you're wearing it. It's strange, but it's probably the most comfortable backpack I have. And it's big too. It has water bottle and umbrella side compartments, a 17-inch computer compartment, 15-inch tablet compartment. You got a top zipper for any stuff you want easy to reach. It is truly a work of art. But not to be outdone, if backpacks aren't your speed, they also got the waist bag. My fiance loves this, honestly. You can also turn it into a sling bag, crossbody, and or wear it on your waist, of course, whatever works for you. And again, it's roomy. It's got a zipper pocket and a front zipper for daily accessories, plus mesh pockets for smaller stuff, but it also fits a big water bottle. And the main compartment for whatever else you might need. You can see right now how much we can fit in here. It's pretty big. Okay, now I love this piece. This is the wallet, the RX-72. It is super nice. It is made from genuine high quality sturdy leather, and the design is perfect. Again, it's low key. It's not like screaming like Gundam in your face, but I love it. On the inside, you have room for all your cash and cards, of course, and it can fit way more than I have. But again, the outside's got this awesome laser engraved metal plaque. This wallet's great. I use it literally every day. And all that panting for this merch getting your mouth dry? Well, hey, they thought of that too, since they also made an RX-78-2 water bottle. This thing is spill-proof too thanks to its dual bottle opening and easy push-button lid specifically designed for one-handed use. Plus, the vacuum design keeps your drinks cold or hot for up to 24 hours, and it does work. I checked it out. It's pretty nice. So if you haven't checked out FX Creations, I absolutely recommend it. You're missing out on the best Gundam merch on the market that is also fashionable, and that's important to me. I don't want to walk around looking like a dork. They make incredibly high quality stuff at solid prices. Plus, you can get a 5% off code using Bonsai Pop. Link is in the description. They got tons of other anime merch too. I highly recommend checking it out. You're not going to be disappointed. So, following the events of Season 1, Tekkadan has established itself as a major player in both the Mars and Earth political scenes. And I almost feel bad talking to you guys about all this politics and background stuff, but then I remember you're Gundam fans and you love this, so, you know, enjoy. So the organization has entered into an alliance with Kudelia Ina Bernstein's new half-metal mining company and began expanding its operations and influence. They have a new Earth branch that fulfills their duties as military advisors to the Arbrow block, and they've expanded their number of members to include some new hires eager to join and fill the slots of those who died in Season 1. And we could go into these new players, but honestly, very few of them have any significance, especially to the overall storyline. One of the reasons I think Season 2 wasn't as well received as Season 1 is because the new characters just don't feel as good as the original ones do. They're not as fleshed out. So for the most part, it's only the characters from Season 1 that matter. The new ones do play a part in representing the theming within the story, but the characters themselves really aren't important. And I'm just talking about the Tekkadan newcomers. There's people in Gjallarhorn that come in Season 2 that are more important. So, Season 2, it brings in a spicy new slogan for Orga's vision of the future: the shortest path by any means necessary. I'm gonna say that sounds unhealthy. Just barrel through everything to get to this proverbial time of peace and prosperity. I'm sure that's going to work out great. But what it really means is far more risk, death, and more considerably questionable choices, to say the least. And we're not talking, you know, boxers or briefs here. We're talking kill no one or kill everyone. And as we know, a mentally healthy individual isn't going to do much by any means necessary, at least not by choice, right? I'm not making pancakes tomorrow by any means necessary. There's always a line that you won't cross. Mine is killing people for pancakes because waffles are better. But therein lies Orga's primary flaw. He has no line. The dude is lineless. There isn't any risk that's too much to propel Tekkadan to the heights he desires. If he wanted waffles, the superior breakfast carb, fight me, he'd demolish every IHOP to get it. Of course, regardless of the risk of his team. Maybe that's a bad analogy, but he wants to get there now. His do not cross parameter died in Season 1, and that guy's name was Biscuit. So Season 2 leads Tekkadan into a continued uneasy alliance with McGillis Farid, who's now one of the senior figures in Gjallarhorn. McGillis intends to launch a full-on coup against the rest of the organization's leadership and wants Tekkadan's support when that time comes. And why would Tekkadan join his side? Why would that be worth the risk? Well, it's because the reward offered is exactly what Orga wants. McGillis promises that when he's in charge of Gjallarhorn, he'll transfer the powers of the Mars division of Gjallarhorn to Tekkadan. Tekkadan would become the controlling force on Mars, the sovereign of Mars, with Orga as the quote-unquote king of Mars. And it's an offer the obviously power-hungry Orga can't refuse. McGillis is giving him everything he wants. They just need to successfully overthrow the reigning military organization that's lasted the last, 300 years. No big deal, don't worry about it. So as Orga sees it, that's the shortest path forward that leads to exactly what he wants. Now, is it a good idea to back a potentially sociopathic guy who's already backstabbed his only friend for power? Probably not. And that's the exact type of thing Biscuit would have helped Orga avoid. And this is what I mean when I said Biscuit's death affects the rest of Blooded Orphans' plot. I don't think that Tekkadan would have been going down this road if he had survived. At the very least, there would be more discussion about whether this is the right call, whether they need that level of power, and what the consequences could be when trying to obtain that level of power, because it's not going to be given for free, As we've discussed many times, in order to get power, people need to die. But without Biscuit being around, that's not brought up because everyone else from Season 1 is basically a yes man. Orga wants it, Orga gets it, his word is law. I mean, hell, he wants to become a king. Tekkadan is not going to stop, and they don't want to stop, and that cult-like pressure on Orga mixed with the lack of balance Biscuit provided is going to result in some really bad consequences down the line. Also, Orga now wears a suit and tie 24/7, the dude went full corporate. But actually, it's supposed to show just how official Tekkadan is now and how busy Orga is as the leader. He's got constant meetings and negotiations since Tekkadan is part of Tewaz, a military advisor, and is working with Kudelia's company in half-metal mining. He's not just the leader, he's a businessman now. He's working 32-hour days, free-basing espresso beans and complaining when people make him take a break. He's that guy now. McGillis McGillis has also been a busy boy. He reorganized the Outer Earth Orbit Regulatory Joint Fleet in Carter's absence, aka taking Carter's fleet for himself, while building new ties with each of Earth's economic blocks, as well as gaining influence in the Mars Gjallarhorn division. His recent success earned him a promotion to commander, as well as a seat at the Seven Stars table as the new head of the Farid family, and the other members of the Seven Stars are impressed with his work. However, he's not done. Taking the power of two of the families and being the son-in-law to a third apparently is not enough. He needs more power if he's going to reform Gjallarhorn, although it feels like he might just be a power-hungry douche. So McGillis brings up his time as an inspector and uncovering the corruption with the Gjallarhorn Mars division. He weaves this half-truth tale that the outer spheres, Mars in particular, have become nearly lawless due to the corruption he wiped out and the Mars branch getting weakened as a result, and asks for permission to bring the Outer Earth Orbit fleet to Mars in order to correct that weakness. Despite his new standing with Gjallarhorn, it's not enough for what McGillis wants. He speaks vaguely of the corruption within the system, but what he really wants to do is dismantle the current way Gjallarhorn operates. Remember, he's adopted. The only reason he's standing anywhere near the top of Gjallarhorn is because someone in his adopted family happened to be good at fighting in mobile suits 300 years ago. Should the same families be in charge for centuries, or should Gjallarhorn be led by meritocracy in election? It's a good point. Good question. The people in power will always work to keep that power, supposedly unless that power is given to them by public opinion. Of course, as we see in our day-to-day lives, elected officials will also work to indefinitely maintain their power. But we can blame the people who voted for them at least. Regardless, Gjallarhorn does need to change, and McGillis thinks that he's the guy who can do it. So, with that said, we need to bring up the new important members of Gjallarhorn we haven't discussed yet. Currently, the outer spheres are protected by the Aryan Had, Outer Lunar Orbit Joint Fleet, commanded by Rustal Elion, who is a current member of the Seven Stars with the most control and power, plus the strongest and largest fleet under his command. Essentially, he's McGillis' newest rival. Lord Elion and his fleet versus McGillis and his Outer Earth Orbit fleet. McGillis is taking the first step into Rustal's territory here by suggesting he should bring his fleet to Mars. McGillis also nominated the current head of the Gjallarhorn Mars branch, meaning he really has control of both these fleets. So Rustal totally understands what McGillis is doing and welcomes the challenge to his authority. But there's another Seven Stars member who's a hot-headed idiot and does not. Yok Kujan, the young head of the Kujan family, is an asshole. And you know he's going to be because he's got the same stupid red eye paint shit that Carter had. He's young, around McGillis' age, and I kinda hate him. You'll see why when we get to the important events later on, but to give you a small taste, he's an overconfident, pretentious prick who makes an ass of himself nearly every time he decides to open that embarrassment he calls mouth. This kid does not understand politics, he does not think ahead, he's just got no redeeming qualities whatsoever. The only thing he has going for him is the same thing that Carter did, his name, and his dumb underlings who follow him anywhere because he's one of the illustrious Seven Stars members. He couldn't possibly do something wrong. He couldn't possibly be a bad person. Anyway, there's one more member of Gjallarhorn that is a bit of a mystery, a consistently masked man that goes by Vidar, who of course never takes off his helmet because every Gundam needs a guy in a mask. He seems to have intimate knowledge of both Gjallarhorn and McGillis, as well as Rustal's trust. He's consistently lending advice on what McGillis might do next, but we're not going to get back to him until the climax of the season, so just take note. He's there, but his reveal only comes towards the very end of the show. So with that all said, let's get back to Mars, right? Currently, Tekkadan is guarding Kudelia's company's tour of the new half-metal mines. It's just a simple security job, but of course a pirate organization called the Dawn Horizon Corps attacks them, and when I say organization, I mean it. These guys have 10 ships and 2,500 members. It's not Gjallarhorn or Tewa's big, but that's a hefty amount of power, and certainly larger than Tekkadan. But of course, their vanguard gets repelled by Mikazuki and his new and improved Gundam Barbatos Lupus. Mikazuki has justifiably earned the label the Devil of Tekkadan thanks to his ruthless fighting style and consistency of being on Tekkadan's front line, so he's their special weapon, but he's no longer a secret weapon. If you plan to fight Tekkadan, you know you're going to have to deal with their Gundam Devil. Now, McGillis wasn't really lying about the state of the Mars sphere. It has become more lawless, otherwise a pirate organization would never have gotten as big as this one. To rectify that, McGillis requests that Tekkadan pursue and capture the Dawn Horizon captain. Now, there's some politics coming into play here. It's an open secret that Tekkadan has supported and worked with McGillis in the past, and he's asking Tekkadan to get this pirate leader in an attempt to destroy the massive organization and give the credit to his fleet. However, Rustal's fleet controls this area, so it's really a race to see who can and apprehend this pirate guy first. Whoever gets the credit will gain more control in the area politically, obviously. The Dawn Horizon Corps has been interfering with Teiwaz, so destroying them would put Tekiden in good standing with the Teiwaz boss, Mr. McMurdo. Everyone has something to gain from getting rid of these pirates. So this climaxes with Tekiden, Rustal's fleet, and a small portion of McGillis's fleet converging in a fight against the pirates while trying to outdo each other in order to claim the credit of capturing their leader. They're vastly outnumbered by Dawn Horizon's 10 ships, and they even have a chance to retreat with minimum casualties and damage, but Orga obviously isn't going to retreat. Even if people are going to die, he needs to move forward. This is another example of his increasing recklessness. Tekiden should not be able to win this fight. They're vastly outnumbered and overpowered, but he plows forward anyway despite the risk and the casualties. So regardless of Dawn Horizon's overwhelming power, Tekiden's deranged and animalistic way of fighting make it very difficult for their mobile suit pilots to beat their opposition. And on top of that, the Arianhod fleet comes in providing accidental reinforcements as Tekiden and Arianhod struggle to see who will capture the leader of the pirates. And in the end, it's Mikazuki who finally beats him and takes him in, ending the fight. McMurdo rewards Tekiden for securing their transportation routes by giving Tekiden the largest half-metal mine on Mars to manage and operate. Not only will it be a huge moneymaker for Teiwaz and now Tekiden once it's fully built, but with Tekiden guarding it, no one would ever dare attack it. Teiwaz is rewarding their work while protecting their assets at the same time. It's a good deal for both parties. Again, I need to meet the guys who write these stories. Like, how can you have that many moving parts? But with all that said, not everybody in Teiwaz is super happy about Tekiden quickly rising in the ranks. Orga's lack of political savvy and reckless abandon towards using force in order to solve all of his problems, plus his alliance with McGillis, has earned Tekiden some new enemies. A large player in Teiwaz named Jazli Donomikols owns the second-ranked subsidiary in Teiwaz under the Turbines. He dislikes Naze and hates Tekiden even more for their strong upstart and immediate favor with the family's leader. So he starts plotting as to how he can get rid of the Turbines and simultaneously bring down Tekiden. At the same time, partnering with McGillis has created an enemy of Rustal Elion, and that is always a bad idea. Now, we haven't discussed Rustal much, despite him being basically the main antagonist for the second season, and that's mostly just because he's a smart and tactful politician. There's a reason he's the strongest member of Gjallarhorn currently, and it's because he's good at looking ahead, predicting what's going to happen and planning accordingly. Honestly though, his character kind of feels barely developed outside of those traits. Maybe that's just the way the second season goes, but also maybe that's just intentional. Despite his important role, he doesn't really matter outside of being the head of Gjallarhorn. He doesn't have any weaknesses, he's just a good leader and a cunning tactician. So it's hard to say that he's a villain, especially when everything he does in season 2 that's illegal or morally ambiguous could have been compared to what McGillis did in season 1. Yes, he uses people, he outplays his opponents with cunning strategy, but he never actually gets his hands dirty himself. He's very symbolic of political leaders today. Plausible deniability, right? But is he doing what he does for power, or is he doing it for the future of Gjallarhorn? And it's hard to say from the outset, right? Season 2 starts blatantly asking the viewer, who is good? Who is bad? Are your preconceived notions of our protagonist correct? Or is Orga maybe dipping into the dark side and sacrificing his family members for power? Well, it's hard to say, especially because you're shown a certain perspective of events and not necessarily all of the other side. And we'll really tear that apart at the end, but for now, just know that Tekiden is being betrayed on the inside by this rat. He's an inside man working for a man who is working for Rustal. So basically, Rustal is messing with Tekiden on Earth. Meanwhile, Jazli is messing with Tekiden in space. Two fronts, one war. So you must be asking what's happening on Earth. Well, Prime Minister Makanai deals with an assassination attempt that only fails thanks to Chad saving his ass. And Chad's a Tekiden guy, he's been around this whole time, he just doesn't always play a super important role. So Tekiden's Earth branch is now in the hands of Takaki, who's like 13 and just not ready to lead people. Instead, he's being manipulated into making Tekiden fight a never-ending war of exhaustion against the SAU economic bloc, who's supposedly attempted to take Makanai's life. So Orga recognizes that the Earth branch has essentially stopped contacting him, so he expedites a shipment of new mobile suits to Earth to make sure everything is okay. But no matter how fast they travel, it's going to take a minimum of 3 weeks to get there. During that time, Takaki gets taken fully advantage of, and Tekiden is utterly exhausted by the war, mostly because they've been sent as the vanguard over and over, never given a full chance to rest. This war is also strange, since the SAU bloc only has a small military with no experience that was started after Gjallarhorn's meltdown in season 1, they now officially called up Gjallarhorn asking for aid. Since it's an official request and the defending fleet is the Outer Earth Orbit Fleet, McGillis has no choice but to honor their request and assist in attacking Tekiden's forces on Earth. Hope you guys are keeping up talk with me. Come on. You know what's going on. So while McGillis has made an alliance with Tekkenen's HQ, he's currently giving aid to their attackers out of pure obligation. SAU's forces with Gjallarhorn are matched with Arbrau's forces in Tekkenen. Both sides have an experienced player and one with basically no training at all. It keeps the war at a complete standstill, which is a purposeful standstill to draw out all of the strength and weaken Tekkenen and McGillis' forces alike, and eventually draw McGillis out onto the battlefield himself where he can be killed. Plus, this is the first armed conflict between economic blocs and their new militaries. The entire world is watching for the outcome. The longer it takes for a side to win, the more McGillis looks like he's a poor leader of his new fleet. Honestly, it's a genius play by Rustal because everybody in the war loses. It's like what America did with Russia and Afghanistan in the 80s. Meanwhile, he just gets to sit back and laugh and wait. So the team Orga sent to check on Earth finally gets there a month after the fighting starts, and yet they're not allowed to land thanks to the double crossing going on, right? Remember the rat? But they decide, fuck it, we're gonna go in anyway, we'll just go through the SAU instead of Arbrau, and at the same time, McGillis has had enough of the stalemate. If it drags out any longer, it's going to seriously impede his reputation, which means McGillis is going up against Tekkenen now despite their alliance. The problem is that Tekkenen's Earth branch has no clue about this. No one trustworthy has been in contact with HQ in a month, so they're about to try and kill McGillis, Orga's primary ally, which again is a fantastic plan. Here, Rustal's enemy is going to take out their only friend without even realizing it. But McGillis does realize that he's fighting Tekkenen and opens up a channel and asks if Orga ordered them to fight, which creates a moment of hesitation. The entire war feels kind of off, and it's been off the whole time. McGillis actually ends up killing one of Tekkenen's primary fighters while defending himself from them. But just as he's about to get killed, Mikazuki drops out of the sky and stops it all. The jig is now up. McGillis survives, and the war ends as the two sides realize they shouldn't have been fighting in the first place. The rat gets what he deserves for helping create this entire debacle, and we move on. Now back in the Seven Stars chamber, Kujan is placing the blame for the war at McGillis' feet. However, the other 7-star members are happier with how he minimized the damage from it, but with so many issues popping up on Earth, they're no longer all for McGillis taking his fleet to Mars when they might be needed at home. So, Rustal's plan worked. He cornered McGillis in his own sphere of jurisdiction. And with this veiled confrontation between McGillis, a full-on clash is not far off. But before we get to that, we gotta talk about this half-metal mine that was gifted to Tekkenen. So when Tekkenen began construction on the mine and started digging, they stumbled across debris from the Calamity War, which is pretty cool. It's another Gundam frame, as well as a smaller worker-type drone and a larger unit not shaped like a Gundam or mobile worker. Not knowing what they've stumbled upon, but now having strong connections in Gjallarhorn, which has documentation of all of the machinery used during the Calamity War, they ask for some information on what they've found. This sparks an immediate meeting between Orga and McGillis because their discovery is incredibly dangerous. Remember that all of the Gundam technology is supposed to have been like sequestered away or destroyed after the war 300 years ago. And since what they found is a mobile armor, McGillis immediately tells Orga to stop excavating, and they both fly to Mars in order to investigate it. Now this starts the second betrayal arc. McGillis and Tekkenen are both being spied on by Dono Mikkels. As soon as he knows McGillis is going to Mars, he forwards that information to Kujan as a gift to open up a relationship between them. Remember, the 7 Stars just decided McGillis and his fleet should remain near Earth. He shouldn't be traveling to Mars, so he's going in secret. Jasley giving away this information to Kujan and Rustal by proxy sets off a series of events that bring about the climax of the series. So when Rustal gets all of this information, he deduces that McGillis must be going to Mars in order to obtain the Order of the 7 Stars, which is the highest rank in Gjallarhorn, only given to those who have beaten a mobile armor. The original 7 Stars rankings were decided by the number of orders each had. If McGillis is able to kill a mobile armor, he'd surpass everyone else in the 7 Stars by rank, since no one has killed a mobile armor since the Calamity War ended. So Kujan decides to race to Mars in order to confront McGillis and stop him. Now Kujan, as we know, is an idiot. McGillis wasn't after an Order of the 7 Stars. He's genuinely confused when the guy shows up at the site in a mobile suit and starts accusing him of inciting a rebellion and trying to take over the 7 Stars. And I mean, he is trying to do that, but like not at this second. McGillis took specific precautions to ensure that no mobile suits would be near the mobile armor because any Ahab reactor might awaken it, and that would be very bad. But here's Kujan stumbling in like he owns the place. And wouldn't you know it, he gets too close to the mobile armor, wakes it up, and his entire team gets wiped out trying to keep this thing and its subunits at bay so he can flee. So now there's a mobile armor on the loose, and it's self-repairing and back to Calamity War form, and it's on a path towards the closest civilization in order to start ripping people's bodies in half. You gotta remember, these things killed a fourth of humanity 300 years ago. This is a really big deal. These mobile armors have a very good possibility of destroying literally all life on Mars. And yeah, it's all Kujan's fault, like I said. he's kind of an asshole, and he will continue to be so all the way down the line. So now this rogue AI robot of death needs to be taken down. The only way it can be done is with the limited amount of mobile suits at the disposal at the time. Currently, Tekiden has 3 Gundam frames. They got Barbatos, Guzion, and Flauros. I didn't mention it at the time, but Guzion was one of the spoils from beating the Brewers back in Season 1. We only touched on that battle briefly, and besides Vulcan and a 90mm submachine gun, it's mostly hand-to-hand combat type as well, and Flauros is a Gundam frame that they dug up during the half-metal excavation alongside of the mobile armor. Now, Flauros is a lot cooler. Obviously, this one has a lot of guns, including a railgun, short-barrel cannon, 120mm, but it also comes with a shield and a knife. So essentially what this means is that Tekiden only has 3 Gundams to use in order to fight this mobile armor. So in order to do that, they set an ambush for it in order to trap it before it can reach the nearest city. And of course, it's headed towards the primary city in the area. But in order to get to said city, the mobile armor has to make its way through that same tiny valley passage from the 300 movie. You know what I mean? It was a perfect spot for Sparta. Now it's a perfect spot for Tekiden. So the ambush is set. The mobile suit is moving pretty slow, so there's plenty of time to prepare, or there would be, but guess who fucks it up again? You got it right, Kujan and his dumb broken mobile suit, who just show up and shoot the mobile armor. He's so proud of himself thinking he did something when all he did was piss the damn thing off, which made it change its direction and render Tekiden's trap completely useless. Seriously, fuck this guy. So due to his continued booby-doobiness, check out our most recent Konosuba video, the mobile armor is now headed over towards a giant agricultural plant. You know, the kind that literally everybody relies on or they're gonna starve to death. Meanwhile, Kujan is, he's the worst. He's celebrating avenging his fallen comrades, thinking he actually did something, which of course he did not. And even his own team can't convince themselves that he's right. And because of all this, Tekiden is forced to scramble to turn things around. And that looks like this. Tekiden just shooting the mobile armor in the butt. Then other units travel ahead in order to try to defend the plant in case the thing won't change course, but guess what? It doesn't change course. The mobile armor finds the plant and opens fire. Just before it does, one of Tekiden's younger pilots is able to place his mech between the beam cannon and the agricultural plant. And remember when we talked about nanolite armor like an hour ago? This is why. That beam weapon gets a direct hit on the mobile suit, which deflects the beam around it. The mobile suit just barely survives, but even with that deflection, the farm behind it is completely destroyed, and all the people are wiped out. So Mikazuki arrives too late to save the town, whoopsie doopsie, and as he prepares to fight the mobile armor, something happens inside of Barbatos. It freezes up, and all of a sudden, Mika's nose is bleeding. One of the Tekiden's other Gundam pilots tries to get the mobile armor to turn, but as soon as he gets close, the same thing happens. The suit freezes up. The Gundam frames are having an aversion to fighting it for some reason. Well, it turns out that there's some limiters in Gundam frames that react to mobile armor. It limits the amount of data feedback to the pilot, clashing with the pilot's directions to fight. And that clashing in programming versus intent causes the freeze and, you know, the probable brain contusions. It's like trying to open a door with the wrong key. You might get it in the hole, but keep trying to turn it and eventually you're going to break something in the lock or the key itself. So with Guzion and Barbatos out of commission, their only plan is to essentially cave in the whole valley, trapping the mobile armor under the rubble. They're barely going to have enough time to get the ambush prepared, but guess what? Kujan strikes again. He appears legitimately out of nowhere and starts firing on the mobile armor again, so it starts picking up speed. He does 0 damage to it, only antagonizes it, which ruins the ambush. The Gundams are out of commission and the plan is in ruins. Yeah, it's looking bad. Meanwhile, Atra and Kudelia are in Crise, so if that mobile armor gets through, they're totally dead. They have this little heart-to-heart, like, I like Mikazuki, I also like Mizuki, but I like you, I also like you, you're great conversation. And we get it, the Naze lifestyle is rubbing off on you guys. Save it until you're sure the city isn't going to be destroyed. And since Guzion and Barbatos are out of commission currently, their only remaining Gundam frame, Flauros, is up to bat. So you're probably asking, isn't the same thing going to happen to Flauros that happened to the other ones? Yes, but only if it needs to fight up close. Remember what I said about Flauros being more of a gun-heavy Gundam? Well, this is where the Galaxy Cannon comes into play, aka the railgun. They don't shoot it at the mobile armor, instead they use it to cave in the gorge, so we got things caving in all around. This creates a separation between the armor and its little minions. Gjallarhorn and Tekiden's other mobile suits attempt to stop it again, but it's too strong, nothing is working. McGillis is knocked to the side, and no one can even seem to make this thing hesitate. That is, until Barbatos crashes in from above. But Bonsai Pop Mike, what about those limiters that made him bleed out his nose like he saw some boobies? They're still there, they're meant to keep the pilot safe, but it turns out that if they're crazy, they can push past those limiters and unleash the full potential of a Gundam frame. Of course, this is going to be physically detrimental to the pilots. And looking at Mikazuki, he's not doing too hot. So he starts to fight the mobile armor and no one else can even move, they just get in his way. Barbatos has never looked like this. The response time is inhumane, the movements are animalistic. This is several levels beyond what is capable of the modern mobile suits. This is the type of fighting only possible by a pilot fully fused with the Alea Vignana system and surpassing the safety levels of what the human body can handle and feedback from its machines. Also, this bestial display by Gundam Barbatos Lupus harkens back to that new name, Lupus, Beast, Wolf, you get it. And by the end, he's literally fighting with just one fist and breaking nanolaminate armor with it, unparalleled strength, insane dexterity, movements like Barbatos isn't a machine anymore, it feels alive. Single-handedly, Mikazuki takes out the mobile armor, nearly killing himself in the process. He surpassed the limits of what the human body can take and unlocked the true power of a Gundam frame, but it's at a severe cost. He's not getting away with this for free. His entire right side is now paralyzed. He can't walk or move his arm. He can barely keep himself upright. Price was not cheap. Meanwhile, back in the 7 Stars chamber, McGillis gets to take credit for the mobile armor's kill, saying he worked with the local organization in order to subdue it, which I guess is technically true. Not that he really did any of the subduing, but he was there. Kujan is fighting him tooth and nail, saying he set the whole thing up, that he's trying to get an order of the 7 stars, but McGillis says he doesn't even want one. Kujan is looking for support, but even Rustal tells him to sit down and shut up. After the meeting, Rustal even says that he needs to rethink allying with such a dumb idiot. And as we can all see, yes, he sucks. But getting so badly beat on by both Rustal and McGillis kind of breaks him down, and he decides to contact Donald Mickles to get revenge. Just a quick note here, I was watching this on Crunchyroll, the episode where Mikazuki gets paralyzed, and I accidentally scrolled down and saw the comments. And the top comment is, Mikazuki really needs a bitch to come sit on his face. And then in all caps it continues, give this man a break, he deserves this, Kudelia sit on his face. And I don't think there's ever been a case for proving that anime was a mistake. I mean, come on, this is supposed to be an emotional episode, guys. Leave the face sits for a little bit later. Also, there's like 10 other babes in this anime that would be way better for face sits. Anyway, Jaisley's sixth look on the turbines, right? Because if you take out the older brother, the younger one will come for revenge. Teiwa's outfits all the Gundam frames with their weaponry, and the turbines handle most of the transportation for Teiwas in general. Remember how I mentioned Gundam Floros was outfitted with those dual railguns? Those are Dynslave. They're illegal to possess or use, however, Tekkadan used conventional warheads with it, not the giant needle ammo a Dynslave usually takes. So it's a gray area in terms of the ban. However, it's enough for Kujan's Galahorn outfit to crack down on the turbines and frame them by placing evidence of a full-on Dynslave on board one of their freighters. That evidence marks the turbines as an illegal organization. Teiwas can't keep them as a subsidiary if they're illegal, meaning the turbines are suddenly completely on their own without backing. Orga calls Naze in a rage, and Naze tells him to take care of his own family. Kujan's fleet closes in on the turbines, and seriously, I cannot tell you how much I hate this guy. Guess what? Since the turbines have Dane sleeves, he decides it's only fair if he's got them too. So the little bitch has an entire unit decked out with the railguns. Naze has evacuated all of the women from his ship to civilian transport ships, and Kujan fires on them with the Dynslaves. He's using illegal weapons to kill women that he framed and feels justified doing it. Honestly, he's the worst, because there's nobody worse than somebody evil and stupid. Naze even fires surrender flares, and they're just totally ignored. And just to add on to it, Kujan kills Naze. This guy has been with Orga through thick and thin, constant good advice, constant support, a true older brother figure. He dies just because Jaisley is using Kujan to try and provoke Tekkadan into doing something stupid. Naze warns Orga not to interfere and goes out in a blaze of glory, taking down an entire Galahorn ship in the process. And you'd think that would be the end, but no. Jaisley is hungry not just to knock out Naze, but the Teiwas leader too. He thinks it's his time to run Teiwas himself, and so he makes another play since Orga followed Naze's advice and didn't interfere with Galahorn over this. So despite many in Tekkadan furious over Jaisley's betrayal, Orga is keeping them in check. Naze didn't die so they could lose their standing in Teiwas, he died to keep them out of trouble while saving as many of his own people as he could. There's just one minor problem. That wasn't part of Jaisley's plan. He needs Tekkadan to overstep their bounds if he's going to get them ousted from Teiwas, and since plan A didn't work, he settles on a more extreme plan B, straight up murder. He has one of Naze's wives, or widows I guess now, killed in cold blood, shot down for no other reason than to force Tekkadan to fight him. Now here's the politics at play. Jaisley's company was the second largest subsidiary under Teiwas, right? So getting rid of Naze lets him fill that power vacuum, giving him more pull with McMurdo. But like everyone else in the show, the man is just a bit too power hungry. He doesn't want to be the top subsidiary, he wants Teiwas for himself, so his scheme goes like this. Kill Naze's wife to enrage Tekkadan to the point of fighting him. Tekkadan chases his fleet down in space as they battle. Kujan, the dipshit, comes in with reinforcements. And after Kujan gets what he wants by overwhelming and taking down Tekkadan, his Galahorn fleet will arrest McMurdo, leaving the vacant spot at the top to be filled by the next in line, Jasley. Naze's wife Laughter has worked and lived with Tekkadan for almost the entire 2 seasons. She fights with them, trains them, she's basically an unofficial Tekkadan member, which means that she's part of the family, and Jasley killed her just to get a reaction. Well, that asshole move got him one. All of Tekkadan is in a rage, I mean absolutely fuming. Every single one of them is looking to Orga to give the order, destroy Jasley, get revenge. And Orga has no choice but to give the go-ahead. Despite knowing it's going to break their ship with Teiwaz, their backer and support, he's got to fight Jasley or his people might be so angry they'll do it themselves or even rebel against his order and destroy themselves. It's a necessary choice, but is going to have huge consequences. Breaking ties with Teiwaz leaves Tekkadan with only one remaining ally, McGillis. Regardless, they go on a warpath after Jasley, and we cut to a space battle where Tekkadan is absolutely crushing Jasley's fleet. I mean, they are getting wrecked. Jasley was not ready for how scary Tekkadan is to fight. He's getting overwhelmed, and more importantly, Kujan is not showing up. They can't get him on the line. His fleet is nowhere to be found, and without it, Tekkadan is going to absolutely crush Jasley. And in a desperate move, the guy calls Mr. McMurdo and hopes that the boss can call Tekkadan off. However, McMurdo has made a deal with Rustal Elion. Teiwaz will forget about the attacks Galahorn made on the turbines since they were super illegal, and Rustal turns a blind eye to Teiwaz in return, aka Kujan ain't coming. He's grounded by Rustal, and Tekkadan broke their pact with Teiwaz to fight Jasley. They're no longer part of the organization. McMurdo has no control over them anymore. McMurdo isn't a fool either. He knows Jasley set all of this up and had Naze killed. He's not about to help the guy that was trying to double cross and take over his organization. Jasley is on his own, and that's the worst place to be when the devil of Tekkadan is knocking at your door.
Hello, motherfucker.
Now, Barbatos has been fully repaired and upgraded since the battle with the mobile armor. In addition to several repairs and upgrades, the Gundam also has the mobile armor's tail unit installed in the back. Mikazuki can pretty comfortably fight off 2 or even 3 mobile suits simultaneously with neither the front nor the back ever really vulnerable. The tail gives him insane range for a close-up fighter, meaning he can often outrange extra enemies while he's focusing his mace on what's in front of him. He's even more of a monster than he was before. I mean, Jasley is straight up fucked. So he finally gives in and calls Tekkadan in order to surrender, thinking he can reason with Orga, which is a bad call. Tekkadan literally has no other motive than to see this guy dead. And as Jasley realizes negotiation is useless, Barbatos lands right on his ship in front of the bridge. And even as he's still begging, offering money, fingers anything to save his life, Mikazuki crushes their bridge with one swing, killing everybody inside. So we're in the end game now. Tekkadan got their revenge, but they're in the worst spot that they've been in since like the beginning of the series. No support, no backup, it's just them. Meanwhile, McGillis launches his final plan to take over that group. In a live broadcast, his supporters in Galahorn announced their rebellion to the world, specifically a rebellion to root out the corruption within Galahorn and place McGillis as the leader of the organization. And in this announcement, they denounce Rustal Elion for setting up and prolonging the war on Earth and call out Kujan for all of his bullshit, like performing no legal inspection on the turbines, using outlaw dine slaves, framing the turbines for personal gain, purposefully slaughtering innocents on transports, and just being a giant douchebag in general. This all defines the rot within Galahorn. This is the corruption they're trying to fix. All the cards are on the table now. Winner takes all. The only thing left is to see how it plays out. There's no turning back at this point. Now, Rustal was expecting this move and gathers his fleet around the lunar sphere. Meanwhile, McGillis takes over the Earth base of Galahorn, trapping the rest of the 7 stars in their meeting room. Meanwhile, he heads into the Galahorn Gundam vault to enact the final part of his plan, take control of the legendary Gundam Bale. Now, no one has used Bale since Agnika Kairu 300 years ago, although many have tried and failed. With the true Alaya Vinyana system's design a closely guarded secret and the universal taboo of surgically adding bionics to the body, there hasn't been a single Galahorn officer capable of awakening Bale since the Calamity War ended. McGillis intends to change that, symbolically placing him at the top of Galahorn. Now, remember that Bale and Agnika were essentially on the level of religious figures and heroes of their time? Agnika was the original founder of Galahorn. His Gundam reawakening for McGillis as he begins rebellion would be seen as a sign that his claim to Galahorn's commanding role is righteous and true. So just before he gets into Bale, another Gundam frame bursts bursts through the ceiling, piloted by none other than Vidar. Remember Vidar? I told you he was important eventually. He finally takes off his mask to reveal he's actually Galio Baldwin. He never died. But they say 3 is a party. Barbatos drops in the ceiling as well. McGillis tells Mikazuki to kill Galio. After all, Galio is dirt on McGillis from season 1. McGillis did go through with the whole bad guy diatribe of explaining his entire plot right before quote-unquote killing Galio back in Edmonton. So he's a definite snag in the plan that could lose supporters if Galio comes forward with what he knows. Now, you'd expect him to be no match for Mikazuki with Barbatos at full power, but he's not the only one piloting a Gundam without limitations. Galio's Kamaris Vidar Gundam has a special one-of-a-kind system installed, the Elia Vignana Type E system. Much like the regular AV system, the AV Type E system connects to the pilot via implants. This unique version, unlike the leaked version used on Mars, can be put into anyone's body, not just children, so he's capable of harnessing his Gundam at full power just like Mikazuki. The difference between the Type E system is that it connects Galio to the remaining brain of Ein Dalton, linking Galio to Ein, letting Ein's brain use Galio's body to control the mobile suit. The in-between brain actually controls the piloting after Galio chooses the target and allows him to use the Gundam at full power without endangering his own body. Essentially, it's an even more fucked up version of the Elia Vignana system, and the pilot can continuously fight at full strength and never have the paralysis and bleeding side effects that Mikazuki experiences. You could say it evens the playing field, but I'd argue it actually gives Galio an edge against Mikazuki because he's not crippled. Also in this fight, Galio isn't going to have any lasting effects, whereas Mikazuki is probably going to kill himself if he keeps pushing Barbatos to maximum strength. Now, as Galio and Mikazuki fight, McGillis enters Bale, awakening it for the first time in centuries. He's also received an Elia Vignana surgery in order to control the Gundam, and he opens the line to all of Galahorn from within Bale's cockpit, declaring himself the supreme ruler as Bale's pilot. It's like a myth or legend throughout Galahorn that only the ones chosen by Agnika Kairu's soul can pilot Bale. Very few within Galahorn would know about the completed AV system that can work on adults, and therefore making it so literally anyone could pilot Bale. But McGillis' announcement is cut short as Galio and Rastal interrupt him, declaring McGillis Farid as a traitor who murdered Carta Issue, and forced his father from the 7 stars, and attempted to kill Galio while marrying his sister in a scheme to take over the Baldwin family as well. Rastal then announces that even if it means breaking the laws of Galahorn, he is going to bring McGillis to justice. It is an actual law in their organization that Bale's pilot is the leader. It's a stupid law, like not being able to bring a giraffe through the town common, but it is true. These announcements split Galahorn into 2 camps, fighting a civil war to see which side comes out on top. So McGillis truly believes that with Bale in his pocket, the rest of Galahorn will fall in line and obey without question. His words are the words of Agnika Kairu, the war deity. I mean, they're actually not, he just got a surgery, but that's what he's spouting, and he has every reason to believe that to be true. But Rastal says that if McGillis respected history, he would never have awakened Bale. The remaining 7-star members basically think he's insane. It's not well explained in the show itself, but with a little Google Translate on the Gundam Bale manual, it said that while Agnika did found Galahorn, he left the management to the 7 stars. Essentially, Agnika never actually led Galahorn. He purposefully left the organization in the hands of others, probably because he got as fucked up as Mikazuki piloting the Gundam.
Now that's a lot of damage!
If McGillis actually knew or respected the history of Galahorn, he'd know that Agnika was never more than a pilot. But to the young officers, the randos who come from nobody families, McGillis is like a messiah. He's trying to change the system in a way that would benefit them, dismantle the 300-year-old oligarchy and rebuild a system where everyone is equal. That's appealing to a lot of people, and having Bale to back it up makes it almost like a religious crusade. Is that really what McGillis intends to do though? It's hard to say. He's so obsessed with being at the top of Galahorn, it feels like his plans past that are kinda non-existent. He's obsessed with getting there, not exactly what he'll do after. He might have a good number of lower level Galahorn members following his lead, but those in power are far less likely to go along with it. But the remaining 7 stars members decide that they are not going to defy Bale, but they also aren't going to obey McGillis. And then they decide to fuck off to Switzerland until either Rustal or McGillis wins. And now McGillis is in the same boat as Tekkadan. He only has one ally for this upcoming fight against the strongest fleet in Galahorn. So the battle finally begins. McGillis and Tekkadan are extremely outnumbered. Their only real hope is to kill Rustal, forcing a surrender from the rest of his fleet. Cut off the snake's head, so to speak. However, Rustal doesn't intend to play fair. As McGillis gets reinforcements from allied forces, the Aryan HUD fleet sends out a retreat signal. signal. All of their forces withdraw from the reinforcements, but don't surrender. A long mobile suit appears from the reinforcements carrying a Dynaslife and fires it. That's right, Rustal planted a traitor in McGillis's reinforcements that fires a single Dynaslife, allowing him the right to return fire with the same kind of weapon. He's basically creating a they fired the banned weapons first scenario to make his use of an entire battalion with Dynaslifes legitimate. It's self-defense now.
It's coming right for us!
All of Ari and Hod's fighters retreated to not get caught up in the insane volley of Dynaslife needle shots. And with the railgun team in play, Tekkadan and McGillis's fleet are fucked. There's absolutely no way they can compete against these things. Tekkadan loses one of their ships in the barrage, meaning they are literally down to just a single ship and their mobile units. They make a last-ditch effort using one of the Gundam frames with a single Dynaslife shot to hit the bridge of Rustal's ship, take out the leader, and win. They use their damaged ship as a shield to get close enough to get the shot off, but the Gundam gets hit right before it fires, just barely missing the bridge with the Dynaslife. They were a half second away, one shot from victory, but now they have to retreat. In the aftermath, more than half of their mobile suits are destroyed. The rest are banged up real bad. They've lost friends, everyone is exhausted, and despite a small moment of reprieve from fighting, there's much more to come. McGillis expects help to come from the Mars Gjallarhorn branch. However, Rustal has even more power since McGillis lost in this first fight. It's become widely known that McGillis was adopted, so he was never a legitimate Farid child and shouldn't have been in the 7 stars to begin with. The Mars branch won't help them, but at least they're not fighting. So, back in Mars's orbit, Orga is beginning to wonder who his real enemy actually is. His family now is broken, his organization's money is running out, McGillis has no other allies besides them, and now with the Mars Gjallarhorn branch backing down, McGillis is entirely reliant on Tekkadan when Rustal does eventually show up. When Orga began Tekkadan, he had no enemies, and now it's on the verge of collapse because of McGillis, his ally. Now he needs to figure out what's the best move to save his family going forward. At the same time, Earth News is painting both McGillis and Tekkadan as villains and criminals, as well as saying that McGillis was ordering Tekkadan back when they fought Gjallarhorn to get Makanai to his election. Public perception has shifted. Tekkadan are no longer considered heroes. Instead, they're traitors. And with all this, despite his desire to be honorable and never turn on an ally, Orga feels he has no choice. He calls up Rustal Elion, asking if he can save his family by handing over McGillis and bail. But Rustal won't let him. He needs a scapegoat for the events that transpired, and McGillis isn't enough. Orga isn't enough. He's just one man. He needs, instead, to break Tekkadan in order to prove that Gjallarhorn is the mightiest and most righteous in the public eye. So with nowhere left to turn, Orga gathers all of Tekkadan's members for a final speech. If anyone wants to quit, you can do it now. He encourages everyone to consider that because he knows Tekkadan is now seen as a criminal organization. Their accounts are frozen, so they got no money. Their timeline is going to be very short moving forward. Those who can leave should, and a few do, but not many. Most of these kids just have nowhere else to go. No family, no job potential, no money. They're considered criminals now. Who would hire them anyway? Tekkadan wasn't just their job, but it was their life, their friends, everything. Tekkadan took them in when no one else would, and they feel obligated to Orga for giving them a life worth living. If the ship is going down, they're going to be fighting to the last breath. Generally, the captain goes down with the ship. In this case, the ship is going down with the captain. Before the final battle, Kudelia finally gets a chance to talk to Mikazuki alone, and he asks her if she'll help raise his child. Because yeah, I forgot to mention this, Mika and Atra got it on before the other big fight because Atra was trying to tie him down with a child so he would feel more obligated not to die and come back. Not the most responsible parenting choices. And Atra told Kudelia that one of them should have a kid with Mikazuki to keep him around, and well, she was the first one who went for it. So if Atra truly is pregnant, Mikazuki wants Kudelia to help raise the kid, and Atra even says that Mika and Kudelia could try for the next one. It's all of a sudden girlfriend now, but this is Gundam, so it's probably not going to work out, especially when shit is about to hit the fan. So with nowhere left to turn, Kudelia comes up with an idea to get Tekkadan's members off the scapegoat list. All the members of Tekkadan have their IDs registered from Krise, the near city. Since Krise is still currently a colony of the Arbrow block, all their ID records are kept on Earth and Arbrow. If Makanai lets them tamper with their identities, they can get their members off Tekkadan's crew list and off Rustal's scapegoat list. But honestly, this part kind of feels dumb and sort of contrived, but I guess it makes some sense for those who will survive the final onslaught. Basically, they do have a way to ensure that the people who make it through this fight aren't totally screwed for the rest of their lives. They can be given new identities so Gjallarhorn doesn't hunt them down, or can't hunt them down. Tekkadan also has a new plan. Let Gjallarhorn level their headquarters while they escape to to Crise via underground tunnels used for transmission, change their IDs so they've got new identities, and let Galahorn believe that all of Tekkadan has died. It'll be starting over, but at least the majority of the crew will make it out alive and have a chance for the future. However, some will have to stay behind and fight in order to make it look real. They also don't currently have a way to contact Makanai. The communications off planet are being cut off by Galahorn. So now, this is no longer about winning, it's about surviving. Orga lets McGillis know that they're fleeing, and he's all alone. Sucks to be McGillis. Now, the tunnels below HQ have collapsed, but aren't impossible to clear, and some of the communication lines still work too. If they can get them up and working, they'll be able to contact Makanai finally when they get to Crise and finish their plan. Now, it's just a race against time. All that's left is for the last mobile suits to stall for time. McGillis is still planning on taking on Rustal, so Orga will travel via car to Crise while Galahorn is distracted with McGillis to ensure everything is set up on the other side. Orga and Mikazuki have parting words, and Orga borrows Mika's gun for the trip. Bale comes out and starts the fight with Galahorn. Ever the strategist, Rustal makes sure that Galahorn doesn't attack at all until Bale does, ensuring, in this case, that he's retaliating and that he didn't throw the first punch. Of course, Kujan is there after being sidelined by Rustal for the last 10 episodes or so. He takes the first hit, dropping his weapons to ensure Rustal's plan is a success. Kujan feels bad for how many subordinates have been killed due to his idiocy, so he's taking the first blow. And of course, being the rat he is, he survives the attack by the skin of his teeth, which sucks. Now, all of Galahorn's ground forces begin attacking McGillis. It seems like luck is with Tekkadan. They escape while Galahorn is distracted, and Orga makes it to Crise and Kudelia's company headquarters where they can contact Makanai and get their ID tampering started. But once they get to Crise, Orga finds out that Rustal is controlling the news as well. They're reporting that Tekkadan refuses to surrender when in reality, Orga tried and was denied. And this is all happening while Galahorn cuts off all sources of communication. Rustal is setting them up to be obliterated and be his scapegoat, just like he said he would. Now, once Orga is able to contact Makanai, finally he agrees to help them, but Orga has to come to Earth in order to finalize the process. The new turbines, led by Naze's remaining wives, have also offered them safe transport off of Mars. Everything is set up. Now the remaining members just need to survive, but it's impossible for all of them to live, of course. Some need to fight. Orga gives his final goodbye to Kudelia, thanking her for everything that she's done for Tekkadan because, without her, they never would have gotten off the ground to begin with. Taking her to Earth was their very first job, and Orga is honored that she chose them as her escort system. With renewed hope and determination to save everyone, Orga walks outside and is immediately fired upon and killed by Galahorn, who are watching Kudelia's office in case he showed up. Welcome to the Gundam version of the Red Wedding, starring children, though he did sacrifice himself to shield one of his younger members, showing that in the end, he always did everything he could to keep his family safe, except for continually sending them into war in order to get more famous and more money, So now Orga's dead. Mikazuki gives a small speech before the final fight. It's tight and to the point. Orga gave orders, let's follow them. Anyone who gets in the way of those are going to be crushed with everything Mikazuki's got, and he ends it with, now live till you die and carry out his orders. The final job is for the mobile suit team to hold off Galahorn until everyone else makes it through the tunnel. So the fight begins, and Tekkadan is obviously insanely outnumbered, but their only objective is to buy time, survive as long as they can. They fight the same as they always have, ruthlessly and like deranged animals. Meanwhile, McGillis intends to take Rustal head on and bail alone. He crashes his ship right into one of the Aryan Han vessels and emerges from the wreckage in Gundam Bale. Obviously, there's only one fighter who can fight on his level, Gaelio. And rather than backing up Gaelio, Rustal lets him fight McGillis one-on-one, and I think the purpose of that is to try and make Gaelio a hero. If he brings McGillis to justice single-handedly, he'll not only be a member of Galahorn, who came back from death, but also a member of the Seven Stars family who defeated the evil McGillis and Bale in one-on-one combat. He's setting up Galahorn's strength for the future by letting Gaelio fight alone. Plus, this is a personal rematch. It's probable that Gaelio wants it this way as well. This isn't just a fight to stop McGillis, but one to prove McGillis wrong. You can't do it alone. You can't stand atop the mountain by yourself. You shed every single ally and friend you've ever had to get here, and it will amount to nothing because it's not true power. It's not true power without the power of friendship. So Gaelio, with Ain's help, overwhelms McGillis and Bale, literally forcing him through the hull of a ship. McGillis is on his last legs and actually exits his Gundam just to fight with a gun. He still believes if he can beat Rustal, he can win, but Gaelio is there outside his own mech and shoots him down. In the end, all that personal power didn't amount to anything. That is the end of McGillis and his rebellion. Now on the surface of Mars, Tekkadan members are starting to get overwhelmed by the sheer number of their adversaries. There's only a handful of mobile suits remaining following through on Orga's final orders. The remaining fighters are slowly falling back one by one to escape through the tunnel, leaving only a couple to face off against all of Galahorn's forces. Mikazuki, the Devil of Tekkadan, is still there, and he's never looked the part more, nor lived up to the title better. Galahorn is actually scared. Despite only having 2 Gundams left, Tekkadan is destroying the remaining Galahorn mobile units. Regardless, Galahorn's forces already think they've won, right? No one wants to die when victory is so close. But then, all of a sudden, Galahorn's forces retreat. From outside the atmosphere, a Dynslav battalion is aiming right for the battlefield, and in a final show of force, Rustle uses them to demolish the entire battlefield. But even then, buried and broken, Mikazuki somehow isn't dead. Barbatos is nearly destroyed, missing an arm, nearly armorless, just a body and tail, and yet he stands like a monster in the smoke, eyes shining, reveling in the mayhem. He goes full berserk mode. Barbatos' eyes shine red, and then he attacks everything around him and moves. It's Barbatos' full power, leaving nothing left. Even Kujan isn't safe, and finally, he dies, getting his just desserts, and is crushed in his cockpit. Mikazuki is taking out mobile suits by the dozens, a deranged devil to death flying from one on to the next, fighting unconscious because of all the blood loss in his cockpit. It's just Barbatos on its own, but eventually they both run out of steam and die. Years later, Tekkadan is no more, Galahorn regained their social standing, and the world moved on. And that kind of makes you think, what was the point of all of this? Well, a lot of things did get reformed in the end. After losing the Ishu, Kujan, and Farid families, Galahorn did repeal the Seven Stars Council system and restructured as a more democratic organization with Rustal Elion as its first leader. In turn, Rustal reduced the size of the Galahorn Mars branch, which let the Mars colonies govern themselves. Since there was no longer an overseeing power in that sphere, the Earth blocks gave up the colonies and allowed them to be free. Kudelia took office as the first Union chairperson of the Martian Union. Kudelia and Elion also signed an agreement together to ban human debris, freeing the remaining children from their slavery. Ironically, the world McGillis set out to create and the space Orga wanted for his men was created, but through the hands of others. I think there's a lot of irony in this though, because nobody in Tekkadan really actually cared about any of this shit, right? Here's a bunch of kids that were orphaned, that knew each other and worked for each other, eventually to become, rich and famous enough that they could just not fight wars anymore and kind of live their lives. But their leader died, their organization went under, and I don't know, did they end up doing good? They weren't out to make it so there was no child slaves anymore. They weren't out to, fix the Seven Stars and, form a democratic republic. They were just out for themselves, and they kind of lost. So it doesn't feel good, and the people that we cared about died. But I guess in the end, the political and social issues that created Tekkadan are now gone, and that is in large part thanks to the actions of the people within Tekkadan. But you're still forced to wonder, were Tekkadan really the good guys? I mean, the people left alive made all these dreams come true, and were they really the bad guys? Rustal Elion helped Kudelia put a stop to human debris. The antagonist of Season 2 helped to end child slavery. He democratized Galahorn and did away with the Seven Stars oligarchy. Was he really as morally gray and power hungry as McGillis? When I look at everyone who died and everyone who lived in this story, I can only come to one conclusion. The difference here between good and evil isn't something easily defined. Both sides did horrible things for horrible reasons. Both sides killed for their own gain, but the people that made the real change didn't fight for more power and didn't fight for their own personal gain. They universally fought for the rights of others and a better world. People like Kudelia, for instance. So Tekkadan fought originally for a better life for its members, but once they got that, they kept on fighting for more. Orga wanted Tekkadan to rule Mars, and in the end, everybody died for it, and the organization was dismantled. And while it's a lofty goal, it's not changing the system, it's just switching out who's wearing the crown. McGillis fought for more power and played dirty to get it, but once he gained that pull in Galahorn, it wasn't enough. He didn't just want to make changes, he wanted unconditional rule. And is one person ruling over the leading military power of the world really a change from an oligarchy of 7 families ruling it? Is it better than that? A dictatorship? I mean, it doesn't seem like that would really give power to the people. Was McGillis fighting for change, or was he fighting for himself? And, when you look back at the story, you can't help but think that those who lived actually were the ones who were fighting for change. At least the ones that mattered. I mean, the rest of them just kind of escaped with their lives. But those that died fought for themselves and what they wanted, except for maybe Biscuit. But regardless, they still played crucial roles in changing the future of the post-disaster timeline. Now, obviously change is constant, but how major changes like this come about isn't always A to B. None of this wouldn't have happened without Tekkadan first taking Kudelia to Earth. None of it would have come to pass if McGillis hadn't killed off half of the 7 stars. So in the end, you're kind of left thinking that the real moral of the story is that good change, impactful change, only comes with a lot of sacrifice. Labeling things good and bad is difficult because everybody has some of both. Everybody has the ability to stumble into morally gray choices, but the sacrifices that these children made for the boss and for each other and for a better future made that future a reality, not by their own hands, but through forcing change with their actions. The world remembers McGillis's rebellion. Tekkadan is basically forgotten, but that's also kind of how history works. There's a handful of people whose deeds are remembered and millions who die and their names are completely forgotten. Is it right that the man obsessed with power is the one that gets an event named after him, while the children who just wanted a life away from fighting died violently and are forgotten? Probably not. And that realization feels heavy, but it's also very real. And I think that's the point the show is driving at the end. Change comes from sacrifices, but those sacrifices will likely only be remembered by the few they immediately affected. Tekkadan did play a crucial part in creating a world where children like them don't exist anymore. They might not have done it on purpose, but they followed Orga's orders to the end and created a place that they would have wanted if they had survived. But it's hard to say it wasn't worth it. That being said, from the standpoint of watching the show and getting invested in the characters, it still feels kind of hollow. But that's also Gundam, right? I mean, Gundam is fundamentally about war, and war is very rarely about individuals. War is about big factions, political ideologies, religious ideologies. Yes, you get people who come home with Purple Hearts, you get people who get Medals of Honor, but very rarely does one person have a effect on a war that changes, everything in society and the world and history moving forward. I mean, what are we talking? We're talking Genghis Khan, Alexander the Great, but Blooded Orphans leaves us with a poignant and thought-provoking message about the nature of war, sacrifice, and how those we've long forgotten are often the most important in how we got where we are. It reminds us that while the annals of history may remember the names of powerful and ambitious people, it's often the quiet, unsung heroes who truly shape the course of events, and the CIA, even if their names are lost to time or redacted. And specifically, Tekkadan's story shows that morality is a lot more subjective than we make it out to be. Right and wrong are always taught as black and white, when the reality is that it really matters what angle you're looking at it from and what situation you're in. To some, Tekkadan are heroes, to some, they're villains and forgotten by everybody else. And at this point, I've watched a lot of Gundam, and like I said last time, I did the big video on how to get into the Universal Century and watched basically every single show within that timeline. And I get why people wanted me to check this one out, even though it had nothing to do with that video. Again, thanks a lot for that. But I think what makes Blooded Orphans truly different from the rest is kind of how morose it is, how the faction that you're rooting for is just this small cell. They're almost a non-entity in the bigger political world. Whereas in a lot of other Gundam, you have one giant faction versus another giant faction where they have a lot of power on either side and they're trying to wrestle for supremacy. While Tekkadan did eventually get a big head and, Orga wanted to rule Mars or whatever like that, Tekkadan itself was never a major player. They allied with this person or that person, but they were always just a small mercenary force. They're like the Inglorious Bastards of the Gundam universe. And I think the fact that you're looking at a small organization, that you're looking at mercenaries within a much bigger picture, and that all of them die, shows a side or a small microcosm of war that we don't always see in other Gundam shows. And I think that Gundam has always made a point to show the impact of war on young people, oftentimes children. If we're looking at things like War in the Pocket or even Amuro Ray from the original Mobile Suit Gundam, all of these people and their friends are their kids. But in War in the Pocket, it's one kid who gets in too far over his head, and in the rest, it's kids who generally end up conscripting into military service. Gundam Blooded Orphans is fundamentally about a group of child slaves who created their own mercenary unit in order to make money, essentially. And it's not like this doesn't happen in the real world. I'm sure that it does, especially in war-torn, impoverished societies. So for a franchise like Gundam, which is so big, to choose to make this smaller series about this kind of offshoot of an offshoot of an offshoot of the aspect of war was really interesting. And to make it as dark as it was from beginning to end, it was a choice. And I think all of those choices make this specific show much more provocative and makes it stick with you way longer than a lot of other series within the Gundam universe. For instance, if I was going to put Wing versus Blooded Orphans, I think Blooded Orphans is the better show, but Wing has the better Gundam, 100%. Anyway, that is the insane story of Gundam Blooded Orphans. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for sticking with us through this one. We still have a ton more content scheduled this year, so I can't wait to see you guys in other videos. If you like this, make sure that you subscribe for more. My name's Mike, this is Bonsai Pop, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.